I still recall the solitude of those winter months spent in the frozen wilderness of Norway. It was as if the vast expanse of snow and ice had swallowed all sound and life, leaving only an unsettling silence that echoed within my mind. I had always been drawn to the ancient Viking ruins that dotted the landscape, and this particular site held a special allure for me. A mysterious, long-abandoned temple shrouded in legend and myth. I arrived at the temple with nothing but my research and a backpack full of supplies. The locals warned me about the isolation and the treacherous terrain, but I was determined to uncover its secrets. As I set up camp, the howling wind seemed to pierce through my very being, making me wonder if I had made a terrible mistake. The days blended together in an endless blur of snow and darkness. I spent most of my time poring over dusty tomes and scribbling notes by the faint light of my headlamp. But on the fifth day, something changed. A sudden gust of wind swept through the temple, extinguishing my lantern and plunging me into total darkness. I stumbled around, desperately feeling my way back to camp, but every step seemed to lead me further from safety. The snow crunched beneath my feet like 1,000 brittle bones, making it sound as if I was walking on a grave. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the wind died down, and an unearthly silence fell over the temple. I stood there, frozen in terror, wondering if I had truly lost my way or if something more sinister was at play. The darkness seemed to press in around me, making my heart pound in my chest like a drum. And then, just as I thought all was lost, I heard it, the soft creaking of wood, followed by the faint whisper of pages turning. I knew then that I wasn't alone in the temple. Whatever was making that noise was watching me, waiting for me to make my next move. My heart racing, I fumbled for my lantern and lit it, casting flickering shadows across the walls. The whispering stopped, and an oppressive silence fell over the temple once more. I tried to shake off the feeling of unease, telling myself it was just the wind playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew that something was very wrong. And as I looked around the temple, I couldn't help but wonder if I had truly stumbled upon a place of ancient power, or if I was simply tempting fate. As the night wore on, I found myself drawn back to the heart of the temple, my feet moving towards some unseen destination despite my better judgment. The whispering had stopped, and an expectant hush had fallen over the air. And then, just as I reached the center of the room, I saw it, a book lying open on a pedestal, its pages glowing with an otherworldly light. The title, written in ink that seemed to shimmer like moonlight on water, read Gudrunar Saga, the Song of Gudrun. It was said that this tome held the secrets of the ancient Norse gods and the forbidden knowledge of the Viking pagans. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I realized that I had stumbled upon something truly remarkable. But as I reached out to touch the book, a cold wind swept through the temple once more, extinguishing my lantern and plunging me into darkness. And this time, there was no silence, only the sound of whispers, many voices, all speaking in unison. Welcome till Gudrunar Saga, welcome to the Song of Gudrun. As I reached out to touch the book, my fingers made contact with the worn leather cover. It was cool and damp, as if it had been sitting in the same spot for centuries. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I realized that this was no ordinary tome. The pages were yellowed and cracked, but they seemed to glow with an otherworldly light in the dim illumination of the temple. I gently opened the book, and the whispers ceased, leaving only an expectant silence. The air inside the temple seemed to vibrate with anticipation as I began to read the words that danced across the pages. They were written in a language I didn't understand, but somehow I knew their meaning. It was the voice of the Norns, the ancient goddesses who shaped the destiny of all living things. As I read on, I felt my mind expanding, my consciousness stretching out to encompass the vast expanse of Norse mythology. The stories of Odin and Thor, of Freyja and Loki, came alive in my mind's eye, and I knew that I was holding in my hands a piece of history that few had ever laid eyes on. But as I delved deeper into the book, I began to feel a creeping sense of unease. The words seemed to shift and twist on the page, like living things. And then I saw it, a passage written in ink that glowed with an eerie blue light. It read, "Jafnharður, son of Odin, was cursed to wander the 9 worlds for eternity." Suddenly, the whispers returned, but this time they were different. They spoke in hushed tones of a man who walked among mortals, yet was bound by a fate that no mortal could understand. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized that I had stumbled upon something truly sinister. The book seemed to be drawing me in, tempting me with secrets and forbidden knowledge. And then, just as I thought I couldn't take any more, the words on the page began to change, rearranging themselves into a new message. It read, "You should not have come here." As the days passed, I began to experience strange and unsettling incidents. The wind howled through the temple like a chorus of restless spirits, and the shadows on the walls seemed to move of their own accord. I would find myself lost in thought, only to hear my name being called out by an unseen voice. At first, I tried to brush it off as mere paranoia, but soon the occurrences became too frequent to ignore. One night, I awoke to the sound of footsteps outside my tent. I froze, listening intently, but there was no one there. The silence was oppressive, and I could feel the weight of the temple's gaze upon me. The next morning, I found a small, intricately carved wooden box on my doorstep. Inside, I discovered a single, glinting silver pin with a tiny, perfectly formed snake coiled around its shaft. There was no note or message, just the pin itself. It seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, as if it were alive. I tried to shake off the feeling of unease that settled over me, telling myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew better. The incidents continued to mount, each one more disturbing than the last. I began to wonder if I had made a terrible mistake by coming to this place. Was I being drawn into some sort of dark and malevolent world, or was it simply the product of my own fevered imagination? And then, there were the dreams. Vivid, disturbing visions that seemed all too real. In them, I saw myself standing at the edge of a great precipice, staring down into an abyss of darkness that seemed to stretch on forever. The wind howled around me, and I felt myself being drawn towards the void, powerless to resist its pull. When I woke up, drenched in sweat, I knew that I had to get out of there, but something kept holding me back. As I delved deeper into the mysteries of Gudrunar saga, I began to notice a recurring theme, rituals, and symbols that seemed to hold great significance in the ancient Norse texts. Everywhere I looked, there were references to the 9 worlds, the Aesir gods, and the intricate web of fate that bound them all together. I became obsessed with understanding these symbols, convinced that they held the key to unlocking the secrets of the book. I spent hours poring over ancient texts, trying to decipher the meaning behind the cryptic messages. And then, one night, I stumbled upon a ritual diagram etched into the wall of the temple. It was a complex pattern of lines and shapes, seemingly random at first glance, but as I studied it more closely, I began to see a hidden language unfolding before my eyes. The symbols seemed to match the patterns in Gudrunar saga, and I knew that I had stumbled upon something significant. I spent hours tracing the diagram with my finger, feeling a strange energy building up inside me. It was as if the ritual was awakening a deep part of myself, calling forth a power that had been dormant for centuries. As I finished tracing the pattern, the air around me seemed to shift and ripple, like the surface of a pond struck by a stone. The whispers returned, this time with a new urgency. Welcome till Gudrunar saga. Welcome to the Song of Gudrun. I knew then that I was no longer just reading a book. I was participating in an ancient ritual. And as I looked down at the diagram on the floor, I saw something that made my blood run cold. My own name, etched into the center of the pattern, alongside the words Jafnharður, son of Odin. As I delved deeper into the mysteries of Gudrunar saga, I found myself drawn to the forgotten landscapes of Norway's past. The stories spoke of a land ravaged by fire and ice, where the very earth seemed to have been torn asunder by some cataclysmic event. I became obsessed with finding this forsaken place, convinced that it held the key to unlocking the secrets of the book. I spent weeks poring over ancient maps and charts, searching for any mention of this lost land. And then, one day, I stumbled upon an obscure reference in a long-forgotten text, a place called Niflheim's Reach, where the boundaries between worlds were said to be thin. I knew that I had found what I was looking for. I packed my bags and set off into the unknown, driven by a sense of curiosity and trepidation. The journey took me across treacherous mountains and dark forests, through villages and towns that seemed frozen in time. Everywhere I looked, I saw signs of devastation: charred trees, blackened rocks, and the skeletal remains of creatures that had long since perished. And then on the horizon, I saw it, a vast expanse of twisted, nightmarish beauty, like nothing I had ever seen before. Niflheim's Reach stretched out before me like a scar across the land, a place where the very fabric of reality seemed to be unraveling. As I stepped into this forsaken landscape, I felt a sense of unease wash over me, as if I was being drawn into some sort of twisted game, one that I couldn't escape. The air was thick with an otherworldly energy, and I could feel the weight of the 9 worlds bearing down upon me. I wandered through this desolate land, searching for any sign of life or purpose. And then suddenly I saw it, a figure in the distance, shrouded in mist and shadow. It was tall and imposing, with eyes that burned like stars in the darkness. As I watched, transfixed, the figure began to move towards me, its pace slow and deliberate. I knew then that I was not alone in Niflheim's Reach, and that my journey had only just begun. As I stood there, frozen in terror, the figure drew closer and closer until it was almost upon me. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything went black. When I came to, I was lying on the cold, hard ground, my head throbbing with pain. The figure was nowhere to be seen, but I could still feel its eyes upon me, burning with an otherworldly intensity. I stumbled to my feet and began to make my way back through Niflheim's Reach, desperate to escape the darkness that seemed to be closing in around me. But as I walked, I started to hear whispers, soft, raspy voices that seemed to be coming from all directions at once. They spoke in hushed tones of a great and terrible power, one that was stirring in the depths of the 9 worlds. The whispers grew louder and more urgent until I could make out words: Jafnharður, son of Odin, come forth. I knew then that I had to find some way to silence these voices, or risk being drawn into a power that would consume me whole. I walked for what felt like hours, the whispers growing louder and more intense with every step. And then, just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I saw a glimmer of light on the horizon, a place where the darkness seemed to be receding, and the whispers were fading away into silence. I stumbled towards the light, driven by a desperate hope that I might find some way to escape the darkness that was closing in around me. But as I reached the edge of Niflheim's Reach, I saw something that made my blood run cold, a figure waiting for me, its eyes blazing with an otherworldly energy. It was Odin himself, his face twisted into a snarl of rage and hatred. "You should not have come here," he growled, his voice like thunder in the darkness. "Now you will never leave." As Odin's eyes blazed with intensity, I felt myself being drawn into a world beyond my own. The air around me seemed to ripple and distort, like the surface of a pond struck by a stone. And then, in an instant, I was transported to a realm unlike any I had ever known. I found myself standing on a windswept cliff, surrounded by twisted, nightmarish trees that seemed to writhe and twist in the flickering light. The sky above was a deep, burning crimson, and the air was heavy with the scent of smoke and ash. I felt like I was walking through a dream, one that was both familiar and yet utterly alien. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a woman with skin as white as snow and hair as black as the night. She regarded me with eyes that seemed to see right through me, and I knew that she was the embodiment of the otherworld itself. "Welcome, Jafnharther," she said, her voice like music in my ears. "I have been waiting for you." And with that, she reached out a hand and touched my forehead, and I felt a surge of knowledge and power flood through me. I saw visions of the past and present, of worlds beyond my own and civilizations long since fallen. I saw the threads of fate that bound us all together, and the intricate web of destiny that had been woven for me from the very beginning. And when she withdrew her hand, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The woman vanished as suddenly as she had appeared, leaving me standing alone on the cliff, my mind reeling with the implications of what I had seen. As I stood there, trying to process the visions and knowledge that had been imparted to me by the woman of the otherworld, I felt a strange energy building up inside me. It was as if my very cells were awakening, stirring from a deep slumber. I looked down at my hands and saw that they were beginning to glow with a soft, ethereal light. The light grew brighter and brighter until it was like a small sun in my palm. And then, I felt it, a surge of power and energy that seemed to course through every vein in my body. It was as if the very fabric of reality had been torn apart, revealing a hidden doorway to a new realm of possibility. I knew that I had to act quickly, before the energy reached its peak and threatened to consume me whole. I focused all my willpower on the glowing light, trying to harness its power for myself. And then, in a burst of insight, I understood the key to unlocking the secrets of the Fossegrim, an ancient being said to possess the power of the 9 worlds. The Fossegrim was a guardian of the threshold between worlds, and it was said that only those who possessed a pure heart and a strong will could awaken its power. I knew that I had to find a way to call forth the Fossegrim, to unlock its secrets and harness its power for myself. But as I raised my hands in preparation, I felt a sudden chill run down my spine. I was not alone. As I stood there, frozen in anticipation, the air around me began to ripple and distort once more. The woman of the otherworld reappeared, her eyes gleaming with an otherworldly intensity. "The time has come," she said, her voice like a soft breeze on a summer's day, "to hear the echoes of Norn's fate." And with that, she reached out a hand and touched my forehead once more. I felt a surge of visions and knowledge flood through me, like a torrent of water bursting forth from a dam. I saw the threads of fate that bound the 9 worlds together, the intricate web of destiny that had been woven for me from the very beginning. I saw the 3 Norns, Urther, Verthandi, and Skuld seated at their loom, weaving the tapestry of my life into being. And I heard their whispers, echoing through the ages, speaking secrets and prophecies that only the most attuned could hear. "Jafnharther, son of Odin, will walk the thin line between worlds," they whispered, their voices like a gentle wind in my ear. He will be forced to choose between two paths, one leading to greatness, the other to ruin. I knew then that my fate was already sealed, that the choices I made would shape the course of history itself. The woman of the other world vanished as suddenly as she had appeared, leaving me standing alone in the darkness. But the echoes of Norn's fate remained with me, haunting my every step and whispering secrets in my ear. As I stood there, trying to process the visions and knowledge that had been imparted to me by the woman of the other world, I felt a creeping sense of dread. The weight of Norn's fate bore down upon me like a physical force, threatening to crush my fragile mind beneath its unyielding pressure. I knew then that I was doomed to walk the thin line between worlds, forced to make choices that would shape the course of history itself. And yet, despite the terror that gripped my heart, I felt an insatiable hunger for knowledge, a burning desire to unravel the mysteries of the universe and claim its secrets as my own. I became obsessed with the ancient lore, devouring texts and seeking out forbidden knowledge in dusty, forgotten corners of the world. But the more I learned, the more I realized that the truth was far greater than I could ever have imagined. The threads of fate that bound me to the 9 worlds were woven from a tapestry of madness and despair, and I knew then that I was doomed to descend into the very depths of my own sanity. My mind began to unravel, thread by thread, as the weight of Norn's fate bore down upon me like a physical force. I saw visions of the end times, of worlds colliding in a catastrophic explosion of light and sound. I heard whispers in the darkness, tempting me with forbidden knowledge and promises of power beyond my wildest dreams. And I knew that I was staring into the abyss, peering into the very face of madness itself. As I stood there, staring into the abyss of madness, I felt a sudden jolt of energy course through my veins. The threads of fate that bound me to the 9 worlds seemed to snap taut, as if pulling me towards some unknown destination. And then, in an instant, I was sucked into a vortex of swirling colors and lights. The air around me became a maelstrom of chaotic energy, like a whirlpool sucking down all who dared to approach. I felt myself being pulled apart and put back together again, my very essence torn asunder by the forces that raged within me. And yet, even as I was consumed by the madness, I knew that I had to confront the heart of the maelstrom. For it was there, at its center, that I would find the secret to unlocking Norn's fate and claiming my own destiny. The journey was a blur of color and sound, like a madman's dreamscape come to life. I saw visions of ancient gods and forgotten civilizations, of worlds colliding in a catastrophic explosion of light and sound. And I heard the whispers of the Norns themselves, their voices like a gentle breeze on a summer's day. "Jafnharthur, son of Odin," they whispered, "you must face the heart of the maelstrom, for there lies the key to your destiny." And with that, I was propelled forward, hurtling towards the very center of the storm. The world around me dissolved into chaos as I plunged deeper into the maelstrom's depths. And then, in an instant, I emerged on the other side, transformed by my journey and reborn anew. As I emerged from the maelstrom's depths, I found myself standing at the threshold of a great and ancient door. The air was heavy with an otherworldly energy, like the weight of 1,000 midnights pressing down upon me. And yet, despite the feeling of trepidation that gripped my heart, I knew that I had to step forward into the unknown. For beyond the veil lay the secrets of Norn's fate and the key to unlocking my own destiny. The door creaked open with a dreadful screech, like the sound of 1,000 rusty hinges screaming in agony. And as I stepped through the threshold, I felt myself being drawn into a realm beyond the mortal world. A realm of eternal twilight, where the very fabric of reality seemed to be twisted and distorted. The air was thick with an eerie, unnatural silence, like the stillness that precedes a great storm. And yet, despite the sense of unease that gripped my heart, I knew that I had to press on, for beyond the veil lay the secrets that would set me free. As I walked deeper into this strange and foreboding land, I began to notice that the very ground beneath my feet was shifting and flowing like a liquid. The sky above was a deep, burning crimson, like the color of 1,000 suns blazing in the firmament. And yet, despite the sense of disorientation that gripped me, I knew that I was being drawn towards some hidden truth, some secret that lay at the very heart of Norn's fate. Suddenly, the ground gave way beneath my feet, and I found myself plummeting down a great, dark chasm. The world above grew smaller and smaller as I fell, until it seemed like a tiny, distant memory. And then, in an instant, I landed with a jarring impact on a soft, green surface. As I looked up, I saw that I was standing at the edge of a great, glittering lake. Its surface was smooth as glass, reflecting the burning crimson sky above like a perfect mirror. And yet, despite the sense of tranquility that seemed to emanate from this strange and beautiful place, I knew that I had not reached the end of my journey. For beyond the veil lay the ultimate secret, one that would set me free and unlock the mysteries of Norn's fate once and for all.